Chapter 3762. With Chu Yunshang's voice falling, Chu Yunyao's face suddenly became ugly. What do you mean by this? It's already very embarrassing that things have become like that. It's best to completely forget about it. Now everyone has gradually forgotten this news. Duan Huali obviously doesn't care about it. Why do you still entangle yourself in this matter? Over the years, Duan Huali, you have been tolerating you a lot. No one is a fool. Don't think that we don't know what you have done. It's just you deceiving yourself. Chu Yunshang stared at Chu Yunyao. She felt very helpless that Chu Yunyao had been immersed in Duan Huali's feelings. Speaking of which, she was really not like her sister at all. Chu Yunyao didn't expect her to be so persistent in her feelings. But Duan Huali obviously couldn't like her. If she continued to be stubborn, it would only be her who suffered. Looking at Chu Yunshang's helpless face, Chu Yunyao's expression gradually became ferocious. Forget about it. How can I have your ability? If I could forget, I wouldn't be like this now. If you hadn't interfered in the middle, I wouldn't have been reduced to this situation now. Chu Yunshang was slightly stunned, and her eyebrows could not help frowning. You what you? Chu Yunyao shouted angrily, I'm not as fickle as you. I can't forget like this. After the voice fell, Chu Yunyao didn't want to say anything more and closed the door. Chu Yunshang looked at the closed door, and the helplessness in her heart grew stronger and stronger. She didn't know when the relationship between her and Chu Yunyao had become like this. At the beginning, although their personalities were completely different, their relationship was very good. Who would have thought that it would become like this now? Although she was helpless in her heart, she was helpless. Now no matter what she said, Chu Yunyao couldn't listen to it. Sometimes it would even have the opposite effect. Many times she didn't even want to pay attention to Chu Yunyao. But no matter what, she was her sister after all. Tiangang sect. Ever since they found out that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were safe and sound, Si Tuyen and Mu Jin's stays had become much more comfortable and they even went out to travel. This pair of lovers had been separated for dozens of years. Originally, they thought that they would never meet again in this lifetime. Fortunately, the heavens pitied them and allowed them to reunite in the end. It was just that after they got together, they didn't have many peaceful days. There were always many things involved. It wasn't until this moment that they could truly relax. This time, Si Tuyen wanted to make up for the many years he had owed Mu Jin Sei and repair their relationship that originally had some flaws. However, when they returned to Tiangang sect, they unexpectedly heard Great Elder Qiao Zhang say that a man had been waiting for them for a while. Hearing this news, Si Tuyen couldn't help but be stunned, and he immediately asked, Do you know who it is? Chapter 3763. Astonishing Strength? Si Tuyen frowned. Can you roughly determine that person's cultivation? Qiao Zhang shook her head. I can't determine it. I only know that after he released his pressure, I couldn't move at all. As soon as these words came out, Si Tuyen and Mu Jin Sei's expressions changed. They knew very well how strong Qiao Zhang was. Even the pressure released by Si Tuyen couldn't make Qiao Zhang unable to move. This was enough to show that the other party's strength was much stronger than Si Tuyen's. This person was truly a powerful figure. Si Tuyen and Mu Jin Sei couldn't help but look at each other, secretly guessing in their hearts. Could it be that the other party was looking for trouble? However, after thinking about it, they didn't offend anyone, so they couldn't think of a possible opponent. Did the other party say his purpose in coming here? Mu Jin Sei couldn't help but ask. They didn't have any enemies other than the Yu clan that they had already dealt with. Could it be that they had someone else coming for revenge? He only said that he came to confirm something with the sect master. He didn't have any ill intentions. I told him that the sect master had already gone out to travel and didn't know when he would return. However, he wasn't willing to leave, so I arranged for him to stay in the sect temporarily. He has been waiting for the sect master to return these days. Qiao Zhang looked at Si Tuyen tentatively, not knowing if Si Tuyen would blame her for this. However, the other party's cultivation was too strong. They weren't a match for him at all. If the other party wanted to barge in, they couldn't stop him at all. Rather than that, it was better to take advantage of the other party's kind words and directly invite him in. This way, they could avoid a conflict. Hearing this, Si Tu-yen nodded, but the doubt in his eyes grew stronger. From the other party's attitude, he believed that the other party wasn't looking for trouble. However, he was curious about what the other party wanted to confirm. I understand. Leave this matter to me. You can leave first. Si Tu-yen waved his hand. Yes. After Qiao Zhang left, Mu Jinsei couldn't help but say, the other party is so young and his cultivation is very strong. Do you think he came from Penglai Island? Hearing this, Si Tu-yen's eyes shone. According to what you said, it's very likely. If this person really came from Penglai Island, then it's very likely that he came with ill intentions. Mu Jin's eyes darkened, her expression complicated. If he is Beichen's friend, then he doesn't need to confirm anything at all. But now, he wants to confirm something with us. Could it be that he doesn't know the true relationship between us and Beichen, so he wants to confirm it? Si Tu-yen's eyes flickered with the light of contemplation. He pondered for a moment and said, since the other party has been waiting here for us to return, it is obvious that he will not give up until he achieves his goal. It is meaningless for us to continue guessing here. Why don't we go and investigate? We will know his true intentions after we ask him. You're right. Mu Jinsei nodded, her gaze becoming resolute. Let's go and see what's going on. If the other party is really looking for trouble, we'll think of something else. Chapter 3764. When Si Tu-yen and Mu Jins arrived, they saw a man in blue robes. He was about 30 years old and had an extraordinary handsome appearance. His entire body exuded a scholarly temperament, and his every movement exuded an indescribable noble aura. Just by standing there quietly, he made people feel an inexplicable pressure. They didn't dare to underestimate him in the slightest. Si Tu-yen and Mu Jins were both people with great eyesight. Just by looking at the other party's posture, they knew that he was definitely not an ordinary person. This kind of aura was not something an ordinary person could possess. The nobility and power that came from his bones was not something that could be cultivated in a short period of time. May I know what business you have with my Tiangang sect? Si Tu-yen went straight to the point. When the other party saw that Si Tu-yen and Mu Jins had returned, he seemed very happy. A faint smile suddenly appeared on his face, making his already handsome face even more charming. He cupped his hands towards Si Tu-yen and Mu Jins and said, I've taken the liberty to disturb you. I hope Sect Master C2 and Madam won't take offense. I've come this time to verify something with Sect Master C Tuesday. I hope Sect Master C2 can tell me. Seeing the other party's courteous appearance, Si Tu-yen and Mu Jin's expressions immediately became better. However, they didn't let down their guard because of this. After all, if the other party was looking for trouble, then they had to be careful. They had never been to Penglai Island, but they were full of reverence for it. If the forces there wanted to find trouble with them, then it would be terrible. As everyone knew, Penglai Island's forces were the top forces in Shengxian continent. Although Tiangang sect was very strong in the outside world, it couldn't be compared to Penglai Island's forces. Moreover, the cultivation of the man in front of them was unfathomable. They had already probed him after entering, but they couldn't sense the other party's depth. It could be seen how terrifying he was. May I know what you want to ask? Si Tu-yen's expression was calm and indifferent as he slowly asked. The other party fell into a short period of silence, as if he was thinking about how to phrase it. Then he said, I come from Penglai Island. Si Tu-yen and Mu Jins glanced at each other and their hearts thumped. It seemed that their judgment was right. The other party really did come from Penglai Island. This matter wouldn't be easy to handle. However, the other party's next words stunned them. Sect Master Situ, I heard that Di Beichen is a child you adopted, right? Si Tu-yen frowned and could not help but feel puzzled. If the other party was looking for trouble, he could have just come straight to the point. But why would he ask if Di Beichen was adopted by him? If he were to make an issue out of this, it would be meaningless. However, he wasn't in a hurry to express his stance. Instead, he wanted to see what the other party intended to do. That's right, Beichen was indeed adopted by me. How old was he when you adopted him? The man continued to ask. His bright eyes flashed with eagerness. Clearly, he was very concerned about this matter. Noticing the change in the other party's expression, Si Tian was even more confused. When I picked up Beichen, he was still a baby in swaddling clothes. He was only a few months old. Chapter 3765. That was 23 years ago. After Si Tian replied, he couldn't help but size up the other party. He secretly cursed in his heart. He seems to be extremely concerned about Di Beichen's background. He doesn't seem to be here to cause trouble. Could it be that he knows about Di Beichen's background? After the man heard Si Tian's answer, his breathing clearly stopped. His hands under his sleeves clenched into fists, and his expression was somewhat out of control. After taking a deep breath for a moment, he spoke again. Sect Master Si Tian, I heard that you've been looking for the tears of cold flame and a few other herbs. Is it because Di Beichen has the cursed body? At this moment, a trace of surprise flashed in Si Tian's eyes. How did you know? Why are you asking so many questions about Beichen? Mu Jin's couldn't help but ask at this moment. The other party's behavior was simply too strange. He didn't seem to care about anything else. The only thing he cared about was Di Beichen's background. Especially after receiving Si Tian's answer, the excitement in his eyes was already overflowing. She also had some guesses in her heart. This one is Di Yujue. The man restrained his expression, and his tone was somewhat serious. After the man said his name, Si Tian's expression changed slightly, and he asked in surprise, Your surname is Di? That's right. Di Yujue nodded. I'm sure Sect Master Si Tian has already guessed my purpose for coming here. I'm here to find Di Beichen. If I'm not wrong, he's very likely my son. Di Yujue's words were undoubtedly a heavy bomb that exploded in Si Tian and Mu Jin's hearts. The room suddenly quieted down, and the atmosphere became stagnant. It was as if time had stopped. Si Tian and Mu Jin found it difficult to digest this news. They stared blankly at Di Yujue in front of them, wondering if they had heard wrong. Because this was simply too unbelievable. However, from the other party's serious expression, they could tell that he wasn't joking. On the contrary, he was extremely serious. How did you come to this conclusion? Sidu Yan's expression became solemn. He had been very concerned about Di Beichen's background all these years. Because he knew very well that although Di Beichen usually did not say much, he had always been very concerned about his background. Over the years, he had gone to the place where he found Di Beichen many times, hoping to find Di Beichen's biological parents, in order to fulfill the regret in Di Beichen's heart. Unfortunately, after so long, there was no result. Not only in that area, but in the past 20 years, he had also been to many other places. While searching for Mu Jin-se, he had also inquired about Di Beichen's parents. However, there had been no news of them. It was as if they had never appeared and did not leave behind any traces. Back then, Di Beichen had been very concerned about this matter, but in recent years, there had been no news at all. Di Beichen seemed to have gradually given up on this matter and was about to give up. However, he never thought that just when they thought it was impossible to find Di Beichen's biological father, a man would appear and claim to be Di Beichen's biological father. This really shocked him. Chapter 3766. Ever since my son was born, it was determined that he had the cursed physique. However, our family has already researched a treatment method for the cursed physique, so there is no problem. We just need to wait for him to grow up before we can change his physique. Back then, I went out once and wanted to bring my son to meet a friend. I never thought that I would lose the child because of my carelessness. Speaking of this, Di Yujue's voice was filled with regret and shame. This was definitely the worst thing he had done in his life. Every night he would dream of the situation back then. He hoped that he could make up for this mistake. Unfortunately, it was still a dream in the end. All these years, I have been searching for my son's whereabouts, but there was no news at all. The tears of frigid flame and these few medicinal herbs have always been collected by our family in order to change the physique of the family's cultivators. A few days ago, I suddenly heard that your sect's young master also needs these medicinal herbs. I felt that this might not be a coincidence, so I came to investigate because the possibility of the cursed physique appearing is very small, Di Yujue said slowly. Back then, he accidentally lost his child. In the blink of an eye, 23 years had passed. In these 23 years, he had not been happy for a single day. Everyone in the family blamed him, causing him to be too ashamed to continue staying. As a father, he was even more unable to forgive himself. When he thought of the various dangers that Bewitching might have encountered after he was lost, or that he might have disappeared from this world, or that he might have thought that he was an orphan who was abandoned by his parents when he was born, his heart ached to the extreme. For so many years, he had sent people to many places to search for him, but there was no news. This time, he had accidentally received this news, so he wanted to ask about it. However, he did not have much hope. However, after knowing that Bewitching was adopted, he felt that the possibility of this was higher, so he came. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, he was not willing to give up. Moreover, the existence of the cursed physique was not so coincidental. However, the answers that he asked Si Tian just now coincided with this situation, so he could not help but gradually began to believe it. Hearing Diyu Jue's words, Si Tian's pupils could not help but dilate a little, and he felt complicated. Do you have any evidence to prove this? Si Tian's eyes sank. Many people who knew him knew that Bewitching was picked up by him, and they also knew about the cursed body. These were not secrets. If someone deliberately wanted to fabricate such a lie, it was completely possible to fabricate it. Diyu Jue didn't seem to find Situ Yan's question strange at all. He then said, "When Sect Master Situ picked up Bewitching, did you notice that he was wearing a jade pendant?" As Diyu Jue's voice fell, Situ Yan's eyes suddenly filled with shock. If what Diyu Jue said before had made him suspicious, then after Diyu Jue said this, he suddenly began to believe everything the former said. Chapter 3767. The way Si Tuyen looked at Diyu Jue changed abruptly. There was less suspicion and hostility, and more trust and pleasant surprise in his eyes. Although everyone knew that he had adopted Bewitching many years ago, only he, Bewitching, and Bailey Hongzhuang knew about this jade pendant. Apart from them, he had never mentioned it to anyone else. The others were also completely unaware that Bewitching had such a keepsake on him. However, the other party had directly revealed the origin of this jade pendant. What's more, his surname was D. This meant that the person in front of him was very likely to be Bewitching's biological father. Thinking of this, Si Tuyen could not help but feel a burst of joy in his heart. As the master who had watched Bewitching grow up, he had long regarded Bewitching as his own grandson. Now that he had the opportunity to see his grandson solve this knot in his heart, he was naturally very happy. Although Mu Jin's did not know about this, she understood that Diyu Jue was probably telling the truth from Si Tuyen's gradually changing expression. "I see." A smile appeared on Si Tuyen's face. When I first found Bewitching, he was wearing a jade pendant with the word carved on it. Following Si Tuyen's words, Diyu Jue's face flashed with uncontrollable surprise. "Sect Master C2, is what you said true?" Because he was too excited, Diyu Jue's voice could not help but tremble a little. He had been searching for his son for a total of 23 years. In these 23 years, he had held onto hope countless times but returned in disappointment. He never thought that he would finally find him this time. For a moment, he found it hard to control his emotions. Si Tuyen nodded. "When I first saw his jade pendant, I gave him the surname D because this was the only connection left between him and his parents. I never thought that my judgment would be right. His surname is D." A look of surprise flashed in Diyu Jue's eyes. Previously, he had been curious as to why Bewitching also happened to have the surname D. He never thought that it would be for this reason. Sect Master C2 is indeed quick-witted. Diyu Jue cupped his hands. "May I ask where Bewitching is now? Can I see him?" His dark and deep eyes rippled with excitement. Thinking back, he had only spent a short 3 months with his son. Now that Bewitching was already 23 years old, he did not know what he looked like. All these years, he had been dreaming of the day he would meet his son. Listening to Diyu Jue's words, Si Tuyen and Mu looked at each other helplessly. For so many years, they had been searching for the whereabouts of Bewitching's biological parents, but there was no news at all. Now that Bewitching had gone to Penglai Island, his father from Penglai Island had come here to look for him. It was a freak combination of factors, really a freak combination of factors. Noticing the expressions of Si-Tu Yen and Mu Jin, the excitement in Diyu Jue's eyes faded a little and was replaced with a trace of worry. Why do sect master Si-Tu and Madame have such expressions? Could it be that something happened to Beichen recently? Seeing how worried Diyu Jue was, Si-Tu Yen hurriedly waved his hand and said, "That's not the case. Young Master Di, there's no need to worry. It's just that coincidentally, Zi Beichen went to Pai Island a few days ago and is not here now." Chapter 3768. Diyu Jue's mind couldn't help but think of a tall white figure. That incomparably handsome face. The two of them felt like old friends at first sight. Could it be that the son he was looking for was the Di Beichen he met on Pai Island? When he heard that the young master of Tiangang sect was called Di Beichen, he was very puzzled. However, there were many people with the same name in the world. He didn't believe that things would be so coincidental. However, if Di Beichen went to Penglai Island, then he should be the same person as the Di Beichen he met, right? Seeing Diyu Jue fall into silence, Si-Tu Yen thought that Diyu Jue didn't believe what he said, so he couldn't help but explain. Beichen's cursed body is acting up. Hong Zhuang said that in order to completely cure Beichen's cursed body, we must find those medicinal herbs. We have found all the other medicinal herbs, but we are missing the purple dragon emperor ginseng and the tears of frigid flame. Originally, I planned to go to Penglai Island with Hong Zhuang's father and master, but these two children didn't want us to take the risk, so they left directly when we weren't paying attention. Fortunately, they sent a letter back a few days ago. It said that they met a benefactor and gave them the tears of frigid flame. Beichen's cursed body has now turned into a destiny body. If Diyu Jue had some doubts at first, after hearing this, he couldn't be sure anymore. The Di Beichen he met was the young master of Tiangang sect, his long-lost son. So that's how it is. I didn't expect that I met him long ago, but I couldn't recognize him. Diyu Jue's voice was full of emotion. He finally understood why he, who always kept a certain distance with others, had a feeling of familiarity with Di Beichen at first sight. It turned out that this was the blood affection in the bones. The tears of frigid flame was an extremely important medicinal ingredient to the clan. Even if others came to ask for it, he would never give it to them. However, he had only met Di Beichen once, yet he was willing to give him the tears of frigid fire. When he made this decision, even he himself was a little surprised, but he never regretted it from the beginning to the end. Now that he knew the truth, he couldn't help but rejoice that he had given the tears of frost fire to Di Beichen. Otherwise, with Di Beichen's current condition, he wouldn't be able to hold on much longer. He would definitely regret it. You two have already met? Si-Tu Yen looked at Diyu Jue in surprise and asked. Diyu Jue nodded. Previously, when I was at Penglai Island, I felt like old friends at first sight. The tears of frigid flame was given to him by me. Si-Tu Yen and Mu Jin say couldn't help but widen their eyes. That benefactor is you? That's right. A smile appeared on Diyu Jue's face. Sure enough, it's fate. When he thought of Di Beichen's appearance, Diyu Jue's mood became infinitely better. Originally, he was still a little worried, not knowing how his son had grown up, but now it seemed that he didn't need to worry at all. His son had been raised very well. So that's how it is. Si-Tu Yan's face also showed a smile. I was wondering why Beichen's search for medicinal ingredients was so easy. It turns out that his father was helping him. At this moment, Si-Tu Yan no longer had any doubts about Diyu Jue's identity. Chapter 3769. I wonder who this Hong Zhuang you're talking about is? Diyu Jue couldn't help but ask. His mind couldn't help but think of the beautiful figure that accompanied Di Beichen. Hong Zhuang is my granddaughter and Beichen's wife. Hearing this, Diyu Jue immediately understood, so that's how it is. We've also met on Penglai Island. I wonder if they're doing well when young Master Di saw them? Mu Jins asked with concern. Although Di Beichen and the others had sent back a letter saying that they were doing well, they hadn't seen it with their own eyes. What's more, these two little guys didn't want them to worry, so it was normal for them to only report good news and not bad news. Looking at Mu Jin's concerned look, Diyu Jue's smile widened a bit. Don't worry, they're doing well. That's good. Mu Jin's nodded. Then we can rest assured. These two little guys have gone out to explore, so us old fellows are really worried. In the past, I've always been worried that Bewitching wouldn't have a good time these years, and my heart was filled with endless regret. I didn't expect that Bewitching's luck would be so good, to be able to receive your care and concern. Du Jue's heart was comforted. He could see that Si Tuyen and Mu Jin's concern for Bewitching was not fake. In fact, just from the fact that Bewitching could become the young sect master of Tiangang sect, it could be seen that if they didn't treat him well enough, the position of young sect master would not have fallen on his head. What's more, Si Tian had married his granddaughter to him. He couldn't help but think of the conversation he had with Bewitching before he left. This guy's character was very similar to his own. From Bewitching's performance, it could be seen that he and Bailey Hongzhuang were very loving. As Bewitching's biological parents, they had never participated in his life. Now that he was married, he had already walked on an excellent path in life. It's my fortune to be able to adopt Bewitching. Si Tuyan's face was full of smiles. If it weren't for Bewitching by his side all the time, he would have been alone before. Thank you, Sect Master Situ, for taking care of Bewitching all these years. I can't thank you enough. Du Jue bowed deeply toward Situ Yen. His pitch-black eyes were filled with deep gratitude, and there were even some tears that were faintly surging. God took pity on Bewitching and allowed him to meet Situ Yen. If he had not met Situ Yen, he did not even know if he would still be alive in this world. Thinking of this, Du Jue was extremely grateful to Situ Yen. If it weren't for him, he wouldn't have been able to meet such a good person like Bewitching. Young Master D is too polite. Situ Yen quickly helped Du Jue up. Just by looking at Du Jue's bearing, it could be seen that his status in Penglai Island was not ordinary. Earlier, Du Jue had already said that his clan was located on the Penglai Island. From this, one could see how terrifying his clan was. Most probably, the Tiangang sect was nothing in his eyes. Such a person was now bowing to him. It could be seen that Du Jue was sincerely grateful to him. I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart. If it wasn't for Sect Master Situ who adopted him and nurtured him well, I might not be able to be truly happy in this life. It's all thanks to Sect Master Situ that my son can be like this. Chapter 3770. Du Jue's expression was serious. His words were like an oath, sincere and persistent. Si Tuyen's kindness in raising Bewitching was not something that could be easily repaid. In other words, Du Jue owed Si Tuyen this favor for the rest of his life. Seeing Du Jue like this, Si Tuyen and Mu Jin's felt gratified in their hearts. No wonder Bewitching had always been so outstanding. He must have taken after his father. Young Master D, you don't need to be like this. Si Tuyen said, I adopted Bewitching. In fact, Bewitching has been accompanying this old man all these years. Speaking of which, I have to thank you. Otherwise, this old man would have been very lonely all these years. Hearing Si Tian call himself an old man, Du Jue remembered that Si Tian said that Bailey Hongzhuang was his granddaughter. That meant that he was someone from his grandfather's generation. However, Si Tian and Mu Jin's in front of him looked like they were in their 20s. He really couldn't associate them with someone from his grandfather's generation. Most importantly, he sensed that Si Tuyen and Mu Jin's cultivation wasn't very strong. Logically speaking, it was impossible for them to be so young. With his cultivation, he looked to be around 30 years old. He was actually older than Si Tuyen and Mu Jin's. This was truly a little surprising. Noticing the change in Du Jue's expression, Si Tuyen couldn't help but smile and ask, does young Master D think that my appearance is too young? When he found out that Du Jue was actually Bewitching's father, Si Tuyen sighed in his heart. He looked completely like Bewitching's big brother. He didn't look like his father at all. The reason why he looked like this was entirely because of Du Jue's strength. Therefore, without Du Jue making a move, he knew that Du Jue's strength must be extremely terrifying. Du Jue nodded and asked doubtfully, could it be the rejuvenation pill? That's right, it's the rejuvenation pill. Young Master D has good eyesight, Situ Yen said with a smile. Hearing Situ Yan's reply, the surprise in Du Jue's eyes became even more intense. The pill formula for this rejuvenation pill has long been lost. I didn't expect Sect Master Situ to actually have the rejuvenation pill. It seems like your noble sect has a top alchemist. At this point, Diujue couldn't help but think of Di Baichen. He said, I believe that the fact that Baichen's cursed body could be suppressed until now has a lot to do with this expert. Previously, the Emperor's elder also felt that Di Baichen was the person they were looking for. However, he felt that although Di Baichen and his son were similar in age, their cultivation was very good. Under the control of the cursed body, it was impossible for him to reach such a cultivation level. In fact, he was already half paralyzed. However, Di Baichen had always been fine. This proved that there must be an expert by his side who knew how to restrain the cursed body. Otherwise, Di Baichen would not have been able to survive until now. Hee. Sidu Yen couldn't help but chuckle. There is indeed a very powerful alchemist. She is my granddaughter. Diujue couldn't help but be stunned. Then, his eyes flashed with deep surprise. Sect Master Situ is talking about Hong Zhuang? That's right. Hong Zhuang's attainments in alchemy are very powerful. In the past, when Baichen's cursed body acted up, the doctors were helpless. We only thought that Baichen would never be able to stand up again. We didn't expect to meet Hong Zhuang. Only then did we have a chance. Chapter 3771. Could it be? Baichen's cursed body was also cured by Hong Zhuang? A look of intense shock flashed across Diujue's face. They knew very well just how difficult it was to deal with this cursed body. Ordinary doctors or alchemists were completely helpless against it. If their families had not searched for it for many years, it would have been difficult to solve this problem. He had met Di Baichen's wife, Bailey Hong Zhuang, before. Although he had seen her disguised appearance and did not know her true appearance, she was definitely younger than Di Baichen. At such a young age, she was able to cure the cursed body and refine the return of spring pill. In this way, Bailey Hong Zhuang's attainments in alchemy were simply astonishing. Forget about the outside world, even in their world, to be able to possess such alchemy skills at such a young age, she was definitely worthy of being called a genius. Sidu Yen nodded. That's right. If Hong Zhuang had not recognized that Baichen's cursed body had flared up, we would have thought that someone had poisoned him and had been busy searching for the culprit. Thinking of this, Sidu Yen sighed. He could understand Diujue's current emotions very well. Didn't they just reunite with Hong Zhuang not too long ago? During Hong Zhuang's growth, their family had not been of much help at all. However, what was worth celebrating was that Hong Zhuang had grown up very well. She was so outstanding that it shocked them. Until now, they still did not know how Bailey Hong Zhuang had grown to such a level. Whether it was her medical skills or her alchemy skills, she had reached the peak. What kind of status did the Yu family have? What kind of person was Bailey Hong Zhuang? Yet her medical skills had surpassed her. She was truly amazing. I never thought that Baichen's wife would be so amazing. Diujue's tone was full of admiration. No wonder Baichen could grow up to be so outstanding. It's all because of Sect Master Situ's good upbringing. This granddaughter of yours is even more stunning. Hearing Diujue's praise, Si Tuyen and Mu Jins couldn't help but look at each other with a helpless expression. That's not the case. The fact that Hong Zhuang could grow to this extent has nothing to do with us. Diujue raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, I think Hong Zhuang's parents must be very powerful people. Seeing that Diujue had misunderstood them, Sidu Yen continued, actually, our situation is somewhat similar to Mr. D's. Hong Zhuang has been wandering outside all these years. She only met us not long ago. Hearing this, Diujue couldn't help but be stunned. You mean to say that Miss Bailey also grew up on her own? I'm ashamed to say this. Situ Yen nodded helplessly. At that time, Hong Zhuang's parents were chased by villains and had no choice but to leave Hong Zhuang outside. All these years, it has been Hong Zhuang alone until last year, when Hong Zhuang rescued her parents. Baichen's growth is related to me, but Hong Zhuang completely relied on herself to get to where she is today. It is precisely because of this that I understand Mr. D's feelings very well. Although Diujue said it very simply, he believed that something must have happened when Diujue lost Di Baichen. Otherwise, with Dujue's strength and the importance he attached to Bewitching, he would definitely not lose his son. Therefore, he could completely understand. Chapter 3772. For Miss Bailey to be able to achieve so much on her own, it's really amazing. It can be seen that she is a true genius. Dujue couldn't help but recall the conversation he had with Bewitching. Bewitching was also extremely fond of Bailey Hongzhuang. At that time, he only had some interactions with Bewitching. He didn't have a deep impression of Bailey Hongzhuang. He didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be such an outstanding woman. Fortunately, Bewitching met Bailey Hongzhuang. Otherwise, he couldn't imagine the consequences. Sect Master Situ and Madam are also very lucky to have such a granddaughter. They don't need to worry at all. Hearing this, Situ Yen and Mu Jin's faces also revealed a big smile. They had always been very satisfied with Bailey Hongzhuang. Young Master D, we didn't find any news about you before, so the marriage between Bewitching and Hongzhuang will be decided by us. You see, Situ Yan's dark eyes flashed with a bright light. Dujue was Bewitching's father, but he couldn't attend his son's wedding. It was a big regret. The most important thing was that he didn't know if Dujue was satisfied with this marriage. After all, the families in Penglai Island must be very terrifying. If they were to talk about equal social status, Hongzhuang's identity might not be enough. Mu Jins also understood Situ Yan's worries. Dujue only appeared now. They didn't know whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang finally got together and could finally live together. If Bewitching's family didn't agree, then things would be troublesome. Dujue was very smart. He immediately heard the worry in Situ Yan's words and said with a smile, "All these years, I have been raised by Sect Master Situ. Naturally, Sect Master Situ has the right to decide on Bewitching's marriage. Moreover, Miss Bailey is so outstanding. That is our Bewitching's good fortune." As long as he could find Bewitching, this was already the happiest thing for him. Now that Bewitching had a family, although it was beyond his expectations, he was also very satisfied with this marriage. Only then did Situ Yen heave a sigh of relief. The corners of his lips curled up a little. "I'm relieved to hear that, young Master D. I wonder where Miss Bailey's parents are? I also want to see my in-laws and thank them for marrying their precious daughter to Bewitching." Dujue's smile was gentle and warm. Now that he knew the whereabouts of his son, he was completely relieved. After returning, he only needed to send people to inquire about the whereabouts of Bewitching and the rest. Since he was already here, he should see his in-laws and not be impolite. They are at the lawn estate. If young Master D wants to see them, I can bring you to see them. Then I'll have to trouble Sect Master Situ. The atmosphere became very harmonious. Although it was the first time both sides met, with Bewitching's relationship, they were family. When Situ Yen and Mu Jins brought Dujue to the lawn estate, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were puzzled. They didn't know what kind of person Dujue was. While they were sizing up Dujue was also sizing them up. Chapter 3773. Yunxiao Lingbing, let me introduce you. This is Bewitching's biological father, Dujue. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were stunned by Situ Yan's words. They stared blankly at Dujue, unable to recover their wits. "Father, you said he's Bewitching's father?" Lan Yunxiao couldn't conceal his astonishment. Even though Situ Yen had spoken clearly, he still suspected that he had misheard. This was too shocking. Mu Lingbing couldn't help but say, "Hasn't Bewitching been unable to find his family all these years? You've been searching for so long and haven't found any news." "Ever since young Master D appeared, I finally understood why I couldn't find any news after searching for so many years. It turns out that he wasn't in the outside world, but in Penglai Island." Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing finally reacted. Since Situ Yen was so certain, he must have confirmed Dujue's identity. However, they never thought that Bewitching actually came from Penglai Island. "Are you two Miss Bailey's parents?" Dujue revealed a bright and refined smile. "Speaking of which, this one is truly ashamed. I accidentally lost contact with Bewitching. I've been searching for Bewitching's whereabouts all these years and finally found him. I heard from sect Master Situ that Beichen was married, so I wanted to meet my in-laws. I see. Lan Yunxiao cupped his hands. We haven't been able to find Beichen's parents, so we were very surprised to see young Master D here. I hope young Master D can forgive us. Diyu Jue waved his hand with a smile. It's reasonable. It's my sudden appearance that has disturbed the two of you. It's nothing. We've always wanted to find Beichen's biological parents. Now that we've finally met them, we can't be happier. Mu Lingbing's face lit up with a delighted smile. She had been so shocked that she didn't even have time to rejoice. She had been preoccupied with her suspicions about Diyu Jue's identity. Now that she understood this, she was overjoyed. She didn't feel it before, but after looking at Diyu Jue carefully, she felt that Di Beichen and Diyu Jue were indeed similar. In the past, I felt that Beichen's appearance was extraordinary. His parents must not be ordinary people. After seeing young Master D today, it is indeed so. Lan Yunxiao's eyes were filled with admiration. When he first saw Diyu Jue, he felt that this person was extraordinary. His temperament was outstanding, and he was definitely not an ordinary person. Lan family head, you flatter me. Diyu Jue cupped his hands. Beichen, thank you for taking care of me. I am deeply grateful. You're welcome. Immediately, the room was filled with joy and the atmosphere was harmonious. Diyu Jue was clearly very interested in Di Beichen's life these past few years. During the conversation, he repeatedly asked about Di Beichen's life. He had never participated in Di Beichen's life. Now, he only wanted to know more about Di Beichen. At the very least, it was good to listen. Si Tuyen knew what Diyu Jue was thinking. Following that, he told him all the interesting things that had happened to Di Beichen while he was growing up. Instantly, the room was filled with laughter. Time quietly passed during this conversation. However, no one noticed it at all. It was only when night fell and the servants reminded them that it was time for dinner that they reacted. Chapter 3774. The moon hung high in the sky and the night was as cool as water. Diyu Jue stood in front of the windowsill. The faint moonlight shone on his body, making him look misty and cold. Raising his head to look at the round moon, a feeling of longing gradually surged in Diyu Jue's heart. Ever since he had lost his son, he had not seen the full moon in the family for a long time. The smile on Diyu Jue's face softened as his smile widened. After so many years, finally, he had found his son's whereabouts. Even though he had not returned yet, he could imagine how happy his family would be when they heard the news. Their family would be reunited soon. He believed that everyone would feel very gratified to see Di Beichen. His wife had been unwilling to see him all these years. This time, he could finally be forgiven by her. Their son was still alive and well. He had grown up to be so outstanding. Yunqing, it's been so many years and you've refused to forgive me. You didn't even want to see me. I understand that you hate me for losing our son. Now, I've finally found our son. Once I return to Peng Island, I'll bring him to see you. In the future, our family will be able to live happily together. Diyu Jue murmured. All these years, everyone had thought of him as a hero, but only his family knew that it was all just a facade. In the past, he had always thought that he was very successful. However, ever since that incident, he had become a complete failure. He was such a failure. He could not even protect his own family. What right did he have to be the head of the D family? Fortunately, God had given him a chance to redeem himself. This was the happiest day in his 23 years of life. In the room. Father, how did you confirm that Master D is Beichen's father? Mu Lingbing stared at Situ Yen. Today, it was not convenient for her to ask in front of Diyu Jue. However, she still had some doubts in her heart. After all, this matter was related to Beichen's background. They had to get to the bottom of this. I know you have doubts, but I've already confirmed it. There's no need for you to doubt it. Situ Yen smiled faintly. When my father found Beichen, there was a jade pendant hanging on Beichen's body. Diyu Jue immediately pointed out the jade pendant's appearance and origin. With his status, there was no need for him to lie. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing understood. So that's how it is. I knew that Beichen was not abandoned by his parents. Beichen would be very happy after learning of this matter. Yes, in my opinion, this young Master D is a very good person. Situ Yen sighed, but his expression was somewhat complicated. Beichen's family was on Penglai Island. It was very likely that they would stay there in the future. After all, that was the best place for Beichen to develop. Father, you don't have to worry. With Beichen's filial piety, even if he decides to stay on Penglai Island in the future, he will definitely come to see you often. With Lan Yunxiao's intelligence, he could guess Situ Yan's inner thoughts just by noticing the desolation in his eyes. Chapter 3775. In that case, won't Hong Zhuang have to stay on Penglai Island in the future? Mu Lingbing frowned. She thought that Bailey Hong Zhuang and the rest would be back soon, but if Beichen was from Penglai Island, Hong Zhuang wouldn't be separated from Beichen. It seemed that it would be very difficult for them to see Hong Zhuang again in the future. Hong Zhuang and I finally got to know each other. We haven't been together for long, and now we're going to lose sight of each other again. Mu Lingbing was depressed. She only wanted her family to be reunited and live a good life together, but it seemed that it wouldn't be easy to achieve that. Lan Yunxiao couldn't help but pat Mu Lingbing's shoulder when he saw her depressed appearance. He understood that after all these years, Mu Lingbing had already seen through many things. Her greatest wish was for her family to be reunited. Lingbing, Hong Zhuang and Beichen have their own paths to walk. They're still young, so they naturally want to reach higher realms. As their parents, we should give them the space to do so. Just as Mother said, if we miss them, we can go to Penglai Island to see them. Although the journey is a bit far, it'll just take a bit more time. Besides, don't Beichen and the rest hope that we can go to Penglai Island with them? After I've settled the Lan family's matters, I'll go with you to see them. How about it? Mu Lingbing fell silent for a moment before nodding. You're right. They're still very young, so their thoughts are naturally different from ours. I can't force my own thoughts on them. Right now, I'm most worried that young Master D's family isn't simple. I don't know if Hong Zhuang will be bullied there. Lan Yunxiao's brows revealed his worry. As a member of an aristocratic family, he was very familiar with such matters. With Hong Zhuang's status, no one in the outside world could compare to her. However, on Penglai Island, her status wasn't that important. He only had one daughter, and he couldn't bear to see Hong Zhuang being wronged. It can't be? Mu Lingbing's eyes narrowed. If they dare to bully Hong Zhuang, you don't have to worry. Mu Jin's faintly smiled. Situ's worries are the same as Yun Zhao's, so he had already probed young Master D before this. He said that he was very satisfied with this marriage, so the matter you are thinking of shouldn't happen. What's more, with Beichen's feelings for Hong Zhuang, he wouldn't be willing to let Hong Zhuang suffer. That's true. The curve of Lan Yunxiao's lips softened. Back then, he had seen Beichen's deep affection for Hong Zhuang. That was why he was assured to hand Hong Zhuang over to him. He believed that Beichen wouldn't let Hong Zhuang down. In the following days, Yujue wasn't in a hurry to leave. Instead, he toured many places under Lan Yunxiao's guidance. At the same time, he gained a better understanding of Beichen. Now that he knew who his biological son was, he wasn't in a hurry. After all, he had waited for so many years, so he didn't mind waiting for a few more days. Today, Yujue stood in front of Situ Yen and the others and cupped his hands. Thank you for your hospitality these past few days. I should return to Penglai Island. Chapter 3776. Little brother Lan, I've already stayed here for several days. It's time for me to go back. Yujue's face was brimming with a smile. His originally handsome face was now as elegant as a spring breeze. I finally found Beichen's whereabouts with great difficulty. I also want to reunite with him as soon as possible. Lan Yunxiao originally wanted to urge him to stay, but after hearing Yujue's words, he gave up on that idea. He could understand Yujue's feelings. He was definitely impatient. To be able to stay here for several days, he must have reached Yujue's limit. After all, in Yujue's heart, there was nothing more important than reuniting with his son. Since that's the case, then I won't urge Brother D to stay. If Brother D has time in the future, come visit us again. At that time, you should stay for a few more days. Ha, that's only natural. Du Jue laughed brightly. Little brother Lon, if you have time in the future, you must come to Penglai Island to take a look. I will definitely be a good host. Alright, if there's a chance, we'll definitely come. Then I'll be waiting for you at Penglai Island. Du Jue's face was full of smiles. After only a few days of interaction, he knew that Lan Yunxiao and the rest were all kind people. Beichen had lived with them for all these years, so he definitely hadn't been mistreated. At the same time, he was even more grateful to Situ Yen and the rest for taking care of Di Beichen for him. In the next second, a universe pouch appeared in Du Jue's hand. Little brother Lan, there are some spirit stones and cultivation resources in this universe pouch. You've taken care of Beichen for so many years. As Beichen's father, I have nothing to repay you with. I can only remember your kindness in my heart. These things are just a small token of my sincerity. Lan Yunxiao hastily waved his hand. Brother Di, taking care of Beichen is what we should do. Moreover, Beichen treats us very well. He doesn't need these things. Situ Yen had long regarded Di Beichen as his own grandson, and Di Beichen was also their son-in-law. They should treat Beichen well, so there was no need to thank him. Brother Lan, I know you're all kind-hearted people. From the moment you adopted Beichen, you didn't think of anything in return. But as Beichen's father, my gratitude to you can't be described with words. No matter what, I have to do something. Although these things can't be compared to the kindness you've shown me, I'm sure you'd do the same if you were in my shoes. Lan Yunxiao was silent for a moment. He could understand Du Jue's feelings. On one hand, he was grateful to them. On the other hand, he owed Di Beichen. If he didn't do anything, he wouldn't feel good in his heart. Since Brother Di says so, I won't refuse. A smile appeared on Du Jue's face. That's the right thing to do. After receiving Du Jue's universe pouch, Lan Yunxiao said, Brother Di, take care of yourself. Du Jue nodded. Brother Di, if you need my help in the future, don't hesitate to ask. As long as it's something I can do, I won't refuse. Okay. Remember to come to Penglai Island when you have time. I'll introduce you to other people. We'll definitely go. Take care. Du Jue began his journey back to Penglai Island. Compared to the nervousness he felt when he came to the outside world, Du Jue was extremely happy and his steps were light. Chapter 3777. Mo Yunjue originally didn't need to stay in the Demon Training Tower after completing the challenge. However, he wanted to stay here and wait for the opportunity to reunite with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Now that he had successfully reunited with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, he could peacefully cultivate in the cultivation area. The 6-people team was immediately divided into 2 small teams. Mo Yunjue and Ao Lingxiao cultivated in the cultivation area all day long. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others cultivated in the arena area. According to Mo Yunjue's description, it would be beneficial for them to accumulate more killing intent before breaking through the challenge. Therefore, everyone spent most of their time in the arena. The Demon Training Tower's inheritance was a very good opportunity for them to increase their cultivation. They couldn't easily let it go. As long as they could obtain the inheritance, their cultivation would be able to increase by several levels. It would undoubtedly be of great help. Ever since they knew that Mo Yunjue and Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were friends, the Penglai Island's cultivators looked at them differently. Sure enough, abnormal friends were also abnormal. These people were all young, but none of them were simple. As Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' performance in the arena became more and more fierce, many cultivators didn't want to fight with them anymore. They didn't want to participate in a battle where they were bound to lose. If they were injured or even died because of it, wouldn't it be a pity to lose the killing intent that they had accumulated with great difficulty? After noticing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but change their strategy. After that, they restrained their attacks a little. They only wanted to learn from each other and didn't want to kill. In addition to their arrogant provocation, the number of cultivators who came to fight with them increased. Most of the cultivators here were conceited. When they heard someone mocking them for being cowards, they naturally couldn't accept it. Moreover, although Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were strong, their attacks weren't very ruthless. Since there was no danger to their lives, everyone didn't mind learning from each other. In this way, it would be beneficial for their strength to increase. Time passed quietly in this process. With the continuous battle, the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others improved again. High-intensity battles were the most helpful for cultivators to improve their strength, so their speed of improvement was also very fast. In addition, everyone's fighting style was different, so fighting with different people could enrich their fighting experience. Among the four of them, Bewitching's cultivation had improved the most. In the past, Bewitching had been suppressed by the cursed physique, so his cultivation had been unable to increase. Now that he had transformed into the physique of Heaven's will, the previous suppressions seemed to have erupted. The speed of his improvement left Xiren in the dust. For this point, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was also very emotional. If it weren't for the fact that her cultivation method was heaven-defying, she definitely wouldn't be able to keep up with Bewitching's footsteps. Fortunately, her demon summoning scripture was very special. As she cultivated, there were some signs of evolution. This was something that she had just discovered. It was because of this that she was able to keep up with Bewitching's footsteps and not be left behind. Even so, Bewitching's cultivation speed was still faster than her. This was the terrifying part of the physique of Heaven's will. In the past, the suppression was for the sake of the later stage. Once it changed, it would be a true cultivation genius. Chapter 3778. When Xiren was a little helpless. Bewitching's cultivation was one level higher than his. He wanted to catch up, but according to the current situation, not being left further and further behind was his greatest hope. Haven't I been cultivating with you all day? Don't tell me you don't know how I cultivate? Bewitching said with a faint smile. Xiren sighed. It's precisely because I watch you cultivate that I feel unbalanced in my heart. Clearly, my cultivation time is not shorter than yours, but your cultivation speed is so much faster than mine. It's really infuriating to compare yourself to others. Xiren, you should get used to it as soon as possible. Shangguan Yingying's face rippled with a faint smile. In the past, you and Beichen's cultivation speed were about the same, but Beichen was under the suppression of the cursed body. Now that Beichen's cursed body has been broken, it's normal that you can't catch up. However, if you don't compare yourself to Beichen, your cultivation speed is still very fast. Yingying, you're finally comforting me. Xiren looked at Shangguan Yingying emotionally. You're right, it's better if I don't compare myself to this abnormal person. His talent is higher than mine, and with his physique that is naturally suitable for cultivation, I can't change my fate of being second place forever. Fortunately, I'm open-minded. Good luck. Once you obtain the inheritance of the Devil Training Pagoda, the situation will be different. A bright light appeared in Beichen's deep eyes. Now, he also urgently wanted to increase his strength. The experts in the Penglai Palace were as numerous as the clouds. Chu Yunyao alone was already a headache for them, and with Chu Yunyao's sister, if they did not increase their cultivation before returning, they would have a headache dealing with them. Moreover, the skeletons in the training ground were not simple. Only by becoming stronger could they be safe and sound. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying went to the arena area, Xiren said, Beichen, you've been cultivating especially hard recently. Is Mo Yunjue's appearance pressuring you? Beichen glanced at Xiren indifferently and did not say anything. I don't know what's going on. This kid's cultivation actually increased so quickly. It's really shocking. His cultivation talent has always been very strong, not much different from yours. However, although your cultivation speed was suppressed by the cursed body, you didn't fall behind by much. Speaking of which, it's his cultivation speed that has suddenly increased. Xiren understood in his heart that Mo Yunjue's relationship with them was very friendly. However, no matter what, he still did not let go of his feelings for Bailey Hongzhuang. Although Beichen appeared to be extremely free and easy, men were still stingy in this kind of matter. It was not that simple to make him not care. If I'm not wrong, the reason why his cultivation can increase so quickly should be because he passed the trial of the Heavenly Slaughter Tower. Trial? Xiren was slightly stunned and frowned. He had some doubts in his heart, but he quickly understood what Bewitching was talking about. He could not help but open his eyes wide. Are you talking about the terrifying trial of the Heavenly Slaughter Tower? Bewitching nodded. That's right. Chapter 3779. Listening to Xiren's words, Bewitching only glanced at him, but he closed his eyes and continued to cultivate. Looking at Bewitching like this, Xiren thought for a moment and understood. Thinking about it, this was where Bewitching's pressure came from. Mo Yunjue had always appeared to be very free and easy, but from his actions, it was likely that he was only acting free and easy. In fact, it was not easy for him to completely let go of this matter. He also had some sympathy for Mo Yunjue. Who would have thought that the always cold and ruthless young master of Shitian Tower was actually a romantic? On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation finally successfully broke through to the 7th level of the Purple Realm. At the same time, Bewitching's cultivation also broke through to the 8th level of the Purple Realm. Her beautiful and refined face was filled with a happy smile. Bailey Hongzhuang felt a burst of joy in her heart. Bewitching, you broke through again. Bewitching smiled and nodded, his pair of narrow eyes curved into a charming arc. Wife, you also broke through. Sparring every day and using spirit stones to cultivate at night in this cultivation area, the progress is really extraordinary, much faster than usual. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes curved. The cultivation area's spirit energy was already very rich, and with the supply of spirit stones, the speed of cultivation was naturally faster than before. Now they also understood why the 5th level of the Purple Realm cultivators all ran to Penglai Island. If it was in the outside world, after a cultivator reached this level, the speed of cultivation would be extremely slow if they wanted to increase their cultivation. After all, they could only cultivate spirit energy from the air. Judging from the huge amount of spirit energy needed to break through to the Purple Realm, it would definitely take a long time. However, the spirit stones were very rich in spirit energy. Using spirit stones to cultivate was much faster than absorbing spirit energy from the air. If they stayed in the outside world, let alone the 7th level of the Purple Realm, they might not even be able to break through to the 4th level of the Purple Realm. We have accumulated a lot of killing intent. If there are no problems, we can go to the checkpoint area, Bewitching said. In terms of strength, their strength was naturally not top-notch. However, the Demon Refining Tower's challenge area was similar to the Blood Refining Tower's challenge area. The difficulty of the challenge was related to the strength of the cultivator. The stronger the cultivator, the higher the difficulty of the challenge area. The weaker the cultivator, the lower the difficulty. In short, it was set according to the limit of each cultivator. Therefore, no matter when he went to challenge it, the effect was the same. The reason why they had been waiting was to accumulate enough killing intent before going. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and said, okay. They had spent a lot of time trying to pass the trial. Now it was time to give it a try. After knowing that Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying had broken through, when Xiren and Shangguan Yingying rushed over, they sensed the two's aura and found that it had indeed increased compared to before. Bewitching, Hongzhuang, congratulations on successfully breaking through. Shangguan Yingying congratulated with a smile. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. I see that your aura has also increased. You should be close to breaking through, right? Shangguan Yingying nodded slightly. Cultivating in the cultivation area, the cultivation speed is very fast. We are slightly slower than you, but we should be able to break through in a few days. That's good. Bewitching smiled. Hongzhuang and I are going to the checkpoint area. You're going to the checkpoint now? Xiren asked in surprise. Chapter 3780. You're right. With this cultivation and killing intent, it should be enough. Xiren nodded. Bewitching, Hongzhuang, you have to work hard and succeed. Shangguan Yingying's eyes were filled with anticipation. If you succeed, then your cultivation will increase greatly. You too have already succeeded in obtaining the inheritance of the Blood Refining Tower. I believe that the inheritance of the Demon Refining Tower won't be a problem for you. Xiren's eyes were filled with determination. He believed that with Di Baichen and Bailey Hongzhuang's level of excellence, they would definitely be able to obtain the inheritance of the demon refining tower. Mo Yunjue's cultivation talent had always been on par with Di Baichen's. Since Mo Yunjue could succeed, then presumably Di Baichen wouldn't fail either. Not long after, Ao Lingxiao and Mo Yunjue also came over. After knowing that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen were preparing to attempt the trial, they were also very much in agreement. Baichen, Hongzhuang, everyone might encounter different situations when attempting the trial, but I feel that the most important thing is to advance courageously and fearlessly. Advance courageously and fearlessly? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and muttered. Mo Yunjue nodded. That's right. This killing intent field gathers killing intent and cultivates a killing heart. If you stop because of fear, then I'm afraid it will be very difficult to succeed. I understand. Bailey Hongzhuang replied. Mo Yunjue's analysis was very reasonable. However, the specific situation would only be known after they entered the trial area. Baichen, you guys go ahead first. Yingying and I will go into seclusion for a few days. After we break through, then we will attempt the trial. Okay. Di Baichen nodded. I'll go with Hongzhuang first. If I have any insights, I can share them with you. After making the decision, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen didn't delay any longer and went straight to the trial area. Compared to the arena area and the cultivation area, the number of cultivators in the challenge area was undoubtedly much lower. If it was a normal day, there would be very few cultivators who would come to the challenge area. However, ever since the news of Mo Yunjue obtaining the Devil Training Tower's inheritance spread, many cultivators became more confident and came to the challenge area to try their luck. If they were lucky, they might be able to obtain the inheritance, and from then on, they would be able to achieve a meteoric rise. Therefore, during that period of time, the trial area was bustling with noise. Many cultivators gathered here, all of them thinking that they were extraordinary and only felt that they were the next genius to succeed. However, after such a long time, there was still no other cultivator who had obtained the inheritance. Only then did everyone truly believe that Mo Yunjue was able to obtain the Devil Training Tower's inheritance because of his own outstanding talent and not because of good luck. Right now, the number of cultivators in the trial area is a lot less. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around, the corners of her lips hooked up in a smile. Di Baichen nodded. If it was still as grand as before, I'm afraid that we would have to queue up here. That's true. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Unknowingly, we have stayed in the Devil Training Tower for another 2 months. If we succeed, we can return to Penglai Island. Standing in front of the challenge room, Di Baichen stared at Bailey Hongzhuang and said, "Wife, do your best." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head, her eyes filled with confidence. But Chapter 3781. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen walked into the challenge area together. When the surrounding cultivators saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and Lu Zilong had also started to challenge the challenge area, their eyes flashed with a strange light. After the black-clothed man started to challenge the challenge area, Bailey Hongzhuang and Lu Zilong also started to challenge the challenge area. Their performance in the challenge area was not any worse than the black-clothed man's. Do you think they will also succeed in obtaining the inheritance? What kind of joke is this? Do you think the inheritance is so easy to obtain? The black-clothed man was already lucky to be able to obtain the inheritance. If the two of them can also obtain it, unless they have a way to challenge the challenge area, it's impossible. That's true. In the past 100 years, only the black-clothed man has succeeded in the Demon Training Tower. This is already very impressive. It's impossible for anyone else to succeed. Everyone shook their heads. They only felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen were simply indulging in fantasy. It was already impossible for them to succeed. Just wait. When they come out after failing the challenge area, their faces will definitely be covered in dirt. As the door closed, Bailey Hongzhuang finally saw the scene in the challenge area. She saw that she was in an empty room. The dim light made everything around her a little blurry. It was clearly daytime, but it looked as if it was night. Bailey Hongzhuang vigilantly observed everything around her. She did not dare to relax in the slightest. She knew how terrifying the challenge area was. Perhaps when she relaxed, the attack would quietly come and you would not be able to defend against it. However, Bailey Hongzhuang carefully walked around the entire room and did not find anything. She could not help but frown. Her eyes flashed with an incomprehensible light. What's going on? Why is there nothing in here? Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was filled with doubts. Since there was nothing, what kind of test was this? Could it be that she had to stay in this empty room forever? Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi were all paying attention to Bailey Hongzhuang's actions. However, as soon as they walked through the door, they realized that a powerful force had imprisoned them, causing them to be unable to communicate with Bailey Hongzhuang at all. The Chaos Ring was a divine weapon. Up until now, the various functions it had displayed had amazed them. However, it had been restrained here. How could they not be surprised? This demon training tower is indeed an extraordinary place. We can't communicate with Master. Xiao Hei's eyes flashed with a look of disbelief. Her voice was full of lamentation. From what I can see, there's something strange about this challenge area. Not only is it narrow, it's also very dim. The strangest thing is that Master has been sitting on the same spot without moving since she entered. Fortunately, no one attacked Master. Otherwise, the situation would be terrible, Bai Shi slowly said. Xiao Bai's gaze fell upon Bailey Hongzhuang. Gradually, it could not help but frown. Look, Master has been frowning. There's also a look of confusion on her face. Why is that? Hearing Xiao Bai's words, Xiao He and Bai Shi immediately paid close attention. With one look, they realized that the situation was a little strange. I don't know. Could it be that this test is not about martial strength, but the mind? Bai Shi suddenly asked. Chapter 3782. Bailey Hongzhuang walked around the room a few times and shouted for a while. However, there was still no response. She could not help but frown. This seemed to be an empty room. If she was not so sure that she had walked into the challenge room, she would have suspected that she had walked into the wrong room and arrived at an empty room. Since she could not figure out what the test was, Bailey Hongzhuang was not in a hurry. She simply sat on the ground and wanted to see what the test was about. She believed that there must be a reason why the test was set up this way. She just had to wait quietly and she would find out sooner or later. After all, in the process of the test, once she left, she would fail the test. Hence, she had no way out. Time passed quietly as she waited. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw that there was no movement, she simply closed her eyes and began to cultivate. However, in the process of cultivation, she was still vigilant of her surroundings. As long as there was an attack, she would be the first to react. However, as time passed, there was not the slightest bit of an attack. This place was like an empty room with no special meaning. Regarding this, Bailey Hongzhuang felt very helpless. She was completely unaware of the test routine. According to what Mo Yunjue had told her, the content of this test was completely different from hers. It is indeed a mysterious challenge room. This is the reason why so few people have been able to obtain the inheritance for so many years. Because every cultivator encounters different situations. If the content of the test is the same, then everyone can think of a way to overcome it based on the content of the test. Then, the number of successful cultivators will increase greatly. I'm afraid that all the heirs of the major forces will be able to obtain it. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head and sighed. Since I can't figure out the routine, I can only wait here. I'll cultivate well first. I don't believe that this test will keep me here forever. Day after day passed. Bailey Hongzhuang had been meditating in seclusion on the spot, absorbing the elemental energy in the air. She was pleasantly surprised to find that the elemental energy in the trial area was very rich. She had been using spirit stones to cultivate, and the rich elemental energy in the air had the same effect as if she was cultivating in the cultivation area. Her own cultivation was also gradually increasing through this cultivation process. In the beginning, Bailey Hongzhuang was still able to endure and cultivate here day after day. However, as time passed, she could not help but feel anxious. I'm afraid I've already been here for several months, but there hasn't been any movement. Could it be that I have to stay here forever? Although the essence energy here is very dense and very suitable for my cultivation, I still have many things to do. I can't always stay here, not to mention that Beichen and the rest are still waiting for me. Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face couldn't help but be filled with anxiety. She exited her cultivation state, stood up, and shouted into the room, "If there's any assessment, just start it. What's the meaning of trapping me here?" However, there was still no sound coming from the empty room. It was as if there was only Bailey Hongzhuang here. Bailey Hongzhuang shouted for a while, but after realizing that there was no use, the helplessness in her heart grew stronger. Chapter 3783. What kind of test is this? Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. In the end, she helplessly sat down and continued to cultivate. She didn't know how much time had passed since she started cultivating. In the beginning, Bailey Hongzhuang was counting the number of days she had spent in this room. Later on, she couldn't even tell how long she had been in this room, so she simply stopped caring. During this period of time, she had thought of giving up and walking out of this room. However, every time she was about to open the door, she would fall into hesitation. She didn't want to admit defeat like this. She could fail, but she didn't want to fail so muddle-headedly. Until now, she still didn't know what she was doing here. She also didn't know where she had failed, so she didn't want to leave. Thus, she finally returned to her original spot. The only thing that was worth being happy about was that Bailey Hongzhuang felt that her demonic calling scripture had signs of evolution, but that was just the beginning of the evolution. As she cultivated wholeheartedly during this time, the speed of the demonic calling scripture's evolution was greatly accelerated. She could feel that after the demon summoning scripture had evolved, her cultivation speed had increased by a few notches. It seemed like it had only increased by a few notches, but it was enough to make Bailey Hongzhuang feel unusually happy. At this late stage of cultivation, it would take a long time to improve. Even if it was only a few notches faster, it would save a lot of time. Beichen had the heavenly mandate constitution, so it was much easier for him to cultivate. His cultivation speed was also greatly increased. In the long run, her cultivation would definitely not be able to keep up with Beichen's pace. However, the improvement of the demon summoning scripture had undoubtedly given her a chance to keep up with Beichen. When I first started cultivating the demon summoning scripture, I already knew how powerful it was. In the entire Shungshan continent, there are probably no more than 5 techniques that can be called heaven-defying. Before, I only felt that the cultivation speed was very fast, but I didn't think that it was too powerful. I just didn't think that the demon summoning scripture could evolve. It's really amazing. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed in her heart. As the head of the Bailey family in her previous life, she had seen all sorts of good things. However, this was the first time she had encountered a skill that could evolve. This technique is called the demon summoning scripture. With such a strange name, it should be used for summoning. But what does this demon refer to? I've been cultivating it for so long, but I still haven't discovered its specific use. Bailey Hongzhuang had always had some doubts about this. She had thought about this point before, but after studying it for a long time, she still couldn't understand the reason why this cultivation method was named this way. She didn't know if she would be able to understand it after this cultivation method evolved. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang sighed faintly. I don't know how long this weird assessment will keep me here. Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang's helplessness, the 3 beasties were also confused. Master is usually very calm. Why has she been mumbling to herself ever since she entered this room? Xiao He raised her eyebrows, her eyes filled with confusion. It had been with its master for so long, so it understood her personality very well. Generally speaking, its master's personality was more stable and wouldn't be so impatient. Chapter 3784. Xiao Bai nodded. My thoughts are the same as yours. Judging from master's behavior, she seems to think that she has been in this room for a very long time. A test of endurance? Xiao He frowned. Then this test isn't that dangerous. Although this test isn't dangerous, it's very torturous. Bai Shi's expression was not optimistic. Most importantly, we don't know how long this test will take. A long wait was something that most people could not accept. Furthermore, Bailey Hongzhuang had no idea what she was doing ever since she had entered this place. It was not easy for her to wait patiently. It was not just Bailey Hongzhuang. Bai Shi believed that most cultivators would not be able to hold themselves back. I finally understand why there are so few inheritors of the demon training tower. This test is just too perverse. I'm afraid that many cultivators would not be able to take this first test and would just walk out of the room. Everyone had come here to challenge this test for the sake of increasing their cultivation so that they could live a more carefree life in the future. No one would want to spend all their time in this empty room. This point alone was enough to cause most cultivators to fail. Then what should we do? Xiao He finally understood the difficulty of this test. We can't even warn Master. We can only watch from here. Xiao Bai shrugged. There's no other way. We can only hope that Master understands this herself. However, Master is now in an illusion. It's just too difficult for her to understand this. The three beasts shook their heads and sighed. They felt that this test was just too perverse. Those involved could not see clearly while those on the sidelines could not see clearly. It was just too difficult for those involved to see clearly. Bailey Hongzhuang spent her days in cultivation. Gradually, she did not pay much attention to the passage of time. Since she was here, she would take things as they came. She could not remember how long she had been here. She only felt that she had been here for a very long time. She focused all her attention on her cultivation. During this process, her demon summoning scripture had successfully evolved. After the complete evolution of the demon summoning scripture, the speed of cultivation had greatly increased. Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was also steadily increasing in the process of cultivation. Now that she had completely calmed down, she was less anxious. She was no longer in a hurry to leave, nor was she in a hurry to improve her cultivation. When everything calmed down, she felt completely different from before. Sometimes it was a good thing to stop for a while. Perhaps there was no need to be so impatient. Ever since she found out her true identity in Fengbo country, she had always felt an indescribable sense of urgency. She did her best to raise her cultivation, not daring to relax even a little bit, so that she could save her parents as soon as possible. This was because if she was just a step late, her parents might be in an uncontrollable danger. Therefore, she had to make every second count and not slack off. During this process, she was also exhausted, but she had never said it out loud. Originally, after saving her parents and punishing the Yu clan, she could finally relax. However, Bewitching's cursed body made her unable to relax even a little bit. They did their best to raise their cultivation in order to successfully enter Penglai Island. Otherwise, Bewitching's life would be in danger. Chapter 3785. In life, sometimes it's not a bad thing to slow down a little. I've indeed been too impatient. The urgent need to improve over a long period of time had caused Bailey Hongzhuang to be extremely impatient. Although she did not usually show it, it had always been there. If this mentality had always existed, perhaps there would not be any problems in the short term. However, after a long time, this problem would become apparent. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but feel lucky. Lucky that she had discovered this malignant tumor in the process of the assessment. As long as she could solve it now, everything would still be in time. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but smile from the bottom of her heart. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, the dim environment in front of her eyes suddenly brightened. In another part of the room, a door quietly opened. Noticing this change, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes could not help but flash with a thick sense of astonishment. She knew very well that the opening of that door meant that she had passed the first stage. So this is my first stage of the assessment. It had already started from the moment I walked into this room. Yet I never knew. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but sigh. Her eyes were filled with amazement. This level of assessment was truly beyond her expectations. However, it had helped her a lot. Compared to the Blood Refining Tower's assessment, the Demon Refining Tower's assessment was undoubtedly a level higher. It seems that the Demon Refining Tower's assessment is based on one's heart. Bailey Hongzhuang thought to herself. It was precisely because the assessment was based on one's heart that the way it was conducted was even more unpredictable. If she had not gone through this assessment, she probably would not have known when she would have discovered the existence of this problem. It was truly amazing. This assessment had undoubtedly helped her to solve a hidden danger. It was extremely helpful to her. It seemed that as long as she passed the demon refining tower, regardless of whether she succeeded or not, it would be of great help to a cultivator. Looking at the open door in front of her, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze gradually became determined. She must persevere. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang directly walked through the open door and began the next stage of the assessment. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang entered the room, the scene before her eyes suddenly changed. In her line of sight, it was a blood-red world, surrounded by countless cultivators. These cultivators were looking at her like wolves, tigers, and leopards. Their ferocious gazes were as if they wanted to tear her into pieces. Noticing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression suddenly became vigilant. Compared to the scene of the first test, this test seemed to be much more terrifying. The second test is very simple. At this moment, a voice suddenly entered Bailey Hongzhuang's ears. She couldn't help but raise her head and look around. She wanted to know where the sound was coming from, but it seemed to be everywhere. She couldn't tell where it was coming from. Kill everyone here and you'll pass. After hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be stunned. Her eyes flashed with deep astonishment. As far as the eye could see, there were simply too many cultivators around her. How difficult would it be for her to kill all of them? However, this voice clearly had no intention of discussing with her. This was the content of the assessment. If she couldn't complete it, she would fail. Chapter 3786. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was hesitating, the surrounding cultivators had already swarmed towards her like a swarm of bees. Bailey Hongzhuang could see cruelty and excitement in those blood-red eyes. Obviously, if she did not kill these people in front of her, she would be the one to die. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but feel helpless. However, since this was the only way, she could only resolutely walk down this path. In the next moment, the colored glazed sword appeared in her hand. The elemental energy in her body surged out violently. Bailey Hongzhuang did not hesitate to meet the cultivators who were attacking her. The sound of weapons clashing quickly rang out. Bailey Hongzhuang executed the shifting forms technique to dodge the crowd's attacks as she shuttled back and forth between the crowd, harvesting their lives. This was an extremely bloody scene, filled with cruelty and heartlessness. Bailey Hongzhuang was not a heartless person. The cultivators who had died by her hands all had their reasons. The scene before her eyes was clearly different from what she had thought in the past. Unfortunately, she did not have a choice. Furthermore, these cultivators looked at her as if they were jackals and wolves who had finally seen food after being starved for a long time. Their eyes were filled with a faint thirst for food. It was disgusting and terrifying. Bailey Hongzhuang continued to fight. She unleashed her martial arts techniques one after another, severely injuring the surrounding cultivators. Fortunately, although there were many cultivators, their combat power did not surpass hers by much. Hence, she was able to persevere. Even so, Bailey Hongzhuang was not optimistic. Because she was alone, her elemental energy would eventually dry up. Once her elemental energy was depleted, the person who would be in danger would be her. Hence, she had to reduce the consumption of her elemental energy while harvesting the lives of these cultivators. Time gradually passed. The number of cultivators who had fallen under Bailey Hongzhuang's sword gradually increased. Bailey Hongzhuang continuously consumed elixirs to replenish her elemental energy. She was thankful that she had brought quite a number of elixirs with her. Otherwise, she would have been exhausted to death here. Fatigue slowly crept in and Bailey Hongzhuang's sword-wielding hand slowed down. With a slight carelessness, the number of wounds on her body had increased. The pain constantly stimulated her nerves. Unknowingly, her eyes had been stained with blood and were filled with viciousness and heartlessness. Her white robes had been stained red with blood. She could not tell if it was her own blood or someone else's. In the process of this battle, the murderous aura that Bailey Hongzhuang had gradually gathered around her body. This murderous aura was much more intense than the aura that she had accumulated in the arena area. The murderous aura in the arena area was a very mysterious power to her. It filled her body and could increase her strength, but the murderous aura in front of her was a murderous aura that came from her heart. At this moment, her eyes were completely bloodshot. Everyone in front of her was her enemy. What she wanted to do was to use her own hands to slaughter everything in front of her. This situation was completely out of her control. Once she stopped moving, she would be killed by these people. Under such circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang did not know how long she had been fighting. She only felt that the strength in her body was drained and her vision seemed to be blurred. However, the pain from her body stimulated her nerves, making her force herself to continue fighting. This was a bitter battle. A battle that was more miserable than being besieged by a group of cultivators in the outer hall of Penglai. Chapter 3787. When Bailey Hongzhuang exhausted all her strength to fight, Bewitching was also in the same situation. The flowing light sword in his hand was emitting a cold light. Bright red blood had already dyed the blade red. Looking at it, it was a shocking red. However, in this blood red, Bewitching's deep eyes became even darker. That kind of darkness seemed to be hiding a power that could devour everything. The long sword was brandished, contrasting with that impeccable godlike face, revealing a bit of bloodthirst and charm. Bewitching wrinkled his good-looking eyebrows. He had no scruples about these cultivators in front of him. Since he was allowed to kill all of them, then he would kill all of the obstacles. However, he was a little worried. If Bailey Hongzhuang's challenge was also like this, he didn't know if Hongzhuang could persevere. Normally, they would often engage in high-intensity battles. However, the battle in front of them was more cruel and desperate than any of the battles they had participated in before. In the past, he had always been by Hongzhuang's side. However, this time, only Hongzhuang was challenging the challenge. He was really a little worried. The inheritance of the Mo Training Pagoda was more difficult than the inheritance of the Blood Chi Pagoda, but after understanding the content of the assessment of the Mo Training Pagoda, Bewitching also understood why Mo Yunjue could not obtain the inheritance of the Blood Chi field, but could obtain the inheritance of the Murderous Chi field. This was because the Shirtian Tower was a dark and cruel place. As the young master of the Shirtian Tower, Mo Yunjue was certainly not unfamiliar with all of this. On the contrary, Mo Yunjue should be very suitable for this kind of environment. The trials he had passed before were very likely to be the same as the situation in front of him. It was precisely because of this that Mo Yunjue was able to smoothly obtain the inheritance. This was where his advantage lay. If it was an ordinary cultivator, just looking at the scene of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood in front of them, they would probably not be able to accept it. After all, everyone's hands were more or less stained with blood. However, such a huge amount of blood was something they had never experienced before. Bewitching also felt uncomfortable about the situation in front of him, but he didn't feel guilty. If his judgment was right, everything in front of him was probably an illusion. The characteristic of the killing aura was the killing aura. Presumably, this test was to let them adapt to such an environment. If they didn't have such killing aura, they probably wouldn't be able to condense such a terrifying killing aura. "Wife, do your best," Bewitching murmured. In the next moment, a fierce light suddenly bloomed in his eyes, and then he attacked the crowd without hesitation. Bailey Hongzhuang did not know how long she had been fighting. She only knew that she had to persevere. She could not die here. She wanted to obtain the inheritance of the killing aura. She still had many things to do. A pair of beautiful eyes were suffused with a blood-red light. That beautiful figure had now turned into a blood-red figure. The rich smell of blood covered her nose. The smell was almost nauseating. Finally, after the last cultivator fell, Bailey Hongzhuang could no longer persevere and fell into a coma. When Bailey Hongzhuang woke up again, in front of her was a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. She looked at her hands and clothes that were stained with blood. Her long, shapely eyebrows unconsciously wrinkled. Her beautiful face was quietly covered with a touch of indifference. Chapter 3788. Bailey Hongzhuang thought that after experiencing that battle, she would be able to pass this hurdle. However, when she opened her eyes and realized that she was still in her previous environment, she understood that this stage was not over yet. After recovering her essence energy, she slowly followed the bloody path in front of her and walked forward. Gradually, a few figures appeared in front of her again. After seeing this scene, she understood that if she wanted to pass this stage, she must kill her way out. Otherwise, it would be considered a failure. Her pitch-black eyes suddenly emitted a sharp and cold light. Since that's the case, I'll kill my way out. Her cold voice was filled with unparalleled dominance and ruthlessness. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was extremely cold. The colored glazed sword in her hand emitted a cold light. She moved her shape-shifting shadow and shuttled through the crowd. As she raised her hand and swung her sword, she displayed all her martial skills. Every move was ruthless and she aimed to kill with one blow. This battle not only tested Bailey Hongzhuang's primary energy and combat skills, but it also tested her heart. In such a long battle, if she could not stay true to her heart, it was very likely that she would fall into the devil's path and become a murderous demon. This was not what Bailey Hongzhuang wanted. Therefore, in the process of this battle, she had always tried her best to stay true to her heart. She could not be affected like this. At this point, Bailey Hongzhuang firmly believed that her judgment was not wrong. Thinking back to when she was in the blood refining tower, she found that although the blood-ground abyss was a very evil place, the blood energy in the blood aura field did not contain any blood energy. On the contrary, it was a kind of pure blood energy without any impurities. All the cultivators in the blood aura tower believed that in order to obtain the inheritance of the blood aura tower, one must be strong enough and kill enough cultivators to gather the blood energy. However, this was not the case in reality. Similarly, if one could obtain the inheritance of the killing aura field by killing, then the number of inheritors would not be so small. This kind of murderous aura should also be pure without any impurities or evil thoughts. Just like how the murderous aura of a murderer was completely different from the murderous aura of an avenger, murderous aura was also different from murderous aura. If she treated everything in front of her as a massacre, then she would have failed this round. If she wanted to succeed, she had to stay true to herself and defeat these cultivators one by one. The inheritor of the murderous aura had to rely on his own strength to carve out a bloody path. Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't a stupid person. As soon as she passed the first trial, she understood that the Devil Training Pagoda's trials were actually an illusion. This kind of illusion existed in their hearts. Through this illusion, they could find the source of their own problems. Only by overcoming one's weakness could one become stronger. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faint smile. She couldn't help but feel enlightened in her heart. Her moves also became smoother and more natural. In the trial area. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Hongzhuang entered the trial area, some cultivators heard the news and came over one after another. During this period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had been in the limelight in the Devil Training Tower. Everyone paid close attention to them. Chapter 3789. Most of the cultivators thought that they would come out in less than 4 hours if they failed the first test. However, what happened next was beyond the expectations of most cultivators. They've been in there for an entire day and they haven't come out yet. Don't tell me they've passed the first test? According to what I know, each test takes a day. If one can stay in there for 3 days, they'll be able to receive the inheritance of the murderous aura. Mo Yunjue stayed in there for 3 days. However, most of the cultivators came out not long after they went in. It's already amazing if they can stay in there for a few hours. They've been in there for more than a day. Don't tell me they've really received the inheritance of the murderous aura? One of the cultivators couldn't help but exclaim. If Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying had also received the inheritance, it would be shocking news. However, the cultivators' thought was quickly refuted by the others. Impossible, impossible. It's not that easy to receive the inheritance of the murderous aura. They're just lucky to have stayed in there until now. Xiren and Shangguan Yingying were originally in closed-door cultivation. They only wanted to break through before going to the test. However, as the test area became more and more lively, They couldn't help but go to the test area to check out the situation. Mo Yunjue, is what they said true? Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue. They'll succeed if they stay in there for 3 days? Hearing this, Mo Yunjue pondered for a moment. His expression was somewhat complicated as he said, I'm not very clear about this matter either, but I did stay inside for 3 days when I tried to break through the trial. There are a total of 3 tests. As long as they pass all 3 tests, they'll be able to receive the inheritance. Xiren's eyes lit up. If that's the case, it might really be like what everyone said. Indeed. Mo Yunjue nodded. It seems that Hong Zhuang and Shangguan Yingying have reached the 2nd test. It's very likely that they'll succeed. Ao Lingxiao's eyes shone with surprise. He had personally passed through the test area and knew very well how difficult it was. Ever since he knew that Mo Yunjue had passed the test, he was very surprised. However, he didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen to have a chance of passing the test as well. Back then, he had only been in there for a few hours before he had no choice but to leave. At that time, he only felt that this assessment was too abnormal, and that it would be extremely difficult to pass it. However, Mo Yunjue and the others in front of him made him understand that this difficulty was just his own feeling. He couldn't do it, but someone else could. Thinking of this, Ao Lingxiao's eyes couldn't help but change a little. If Di Beichen could really obtain the inheritance, perhaps he could believe that his judgment was not wrong. With Di Beichen's strength, even if his judgment was wrong, it wouldn't matter too much. Bailey Hongzhuang swung the sword in her hand. After a few days of fighting, she was shocked to find that her opponents were getting stronger and stronger. Fighting against these powerhouses, she felt more and more pressure. It became more and more difficult for her to move forward. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's confidence wasn't affected at all. Instead, it became even more determined. Chapter 3790. Bailey Hongzhuang's advancing speed slowed down, and in the process of fighting, Bailey Hongzhuang discovered that there was actually an opportunity to cultivate here. Once the Yuan Li in her body was exhausted, she could retreat to a place that she had cleared before, and there, her opponents would not take the initiative to provoke her. In this way, her threat was reduced by a bit. However, everything here was too special, and she could only rest after fighting to her limit. Regarding this, Bailey Hongzhuang was both helpless and happy. Helpless because every battle was incomparably painful, and happy because in this process, her strength was increasing at a very fast rate. Compared to fighting in the outside world, fighting with all her strength like this was undoubtedly the best way to increase her strength. If it wasn't for the fact that she was wasting so much time here, cultivating here could also be considered an excellent method. Until now, she had no idea how long she had been in this place, and did not know if everyone had been waiting for her outside. Of course, this thought only appeared for a short moment, and was then suppressed by Bailey Hongzhuang. Since she had already reached this step, then there was no possibility of her giving up. She believed that it wouldn't be long before she would be able to pass the 2nd stage. In this endless process of killing, Bailey Hongzhuang gradually understood what Mo Yunjue meant by advancing courageously and fearlessly. Without this courageously and fearlessly belief, it was absolutely impossible to rely on one's own strength to carve out a bloody path. In this process, Bailey Hongzhuang was shocked to discover that there was no fear in her heart, as if nothing could hurt her anymore. Fear was an emotion that existed in everyone's heart. No matter how strong a person was, there was only something in their heart that they were afraid of. However, in this process of getting stronger and stronger, Bailey Hongzhuang discovered that the feeling of fear was gradually shrinking. After discovering this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but be shocked. This was simply too shocking. She had never thought that this method could actually suppress fear. The demon training tower is truly magical. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but sigh. This was the power of the demon training tower, and at the same time, this was also the reason why it was so difficult for everyone to pass the stage. It was because it was simply too difficult to overcome this, but once it was overcome, then one would truly have the heart of a powerhouse. No wonder since ancient times, all the cultivators who obtained the inheritance were famous figures. To have such a heart of a powerhouse, it would not be easy to not make a name for oneself. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head and sighed. I just don't know how long it will take to break out of this bloody path. Bailey Hongzhuang gazed behind her. The path behind her, the path she had killed so many people Hongzhuang, and the shocking red around her was now no longer make her feel uncomfortable. Forget it, she thought, she of Bailey Hongzhuang's, as long as she had a heart, I will definitely defeat all those people in front of me. Bailey Hongzhuang's pitch-black eyes flashed with a determined light. Her figure flashed, and she once again rushed into the crowd. Compared to the long wait that Bailey Hongzhuang felt, the cultivators outside of the challenge area had a completely different feeling. Chapter 3791. I never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching would be so powerful. They've been in there for such a long time and still haven't come out. If they've passed the second stage, then only the third stage is left. Once they pass the third stage, they'll be able to obtain the inheritance. Why did I feel that the third stage was particularly difficult when I went in? Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching's trial was relatively easy? That's possible. Maybe the demon training tower saw that they were good-looking and lowered the difficulty of the trial. Following this person's words, everyone couldn't help but chuckle. It was clearly a joke, but everyone actually believed it. This was because Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching's performance had clearly exceeded their expectations. They simply couldn't believe it. In comparison, this reason was much easier for them to accept. Almost everyone didn't want anyone else to obtain the inheritance. This only proved that they were far from Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching's level. However, Xiren and the others' emotions were the complete opposite. In my opinion, since Bewitching and Bewitching are already halfway through the second stage, they'll definitely succeed. Xiren couldn't hide the excitement in his eyes. He had always thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching's strength would definitely succeed. Now, it seemed that the possibility of success was very high. Mo Yunjue smiled and nodded. I also believe that they'll definitely succeed. Xiren, Hongzhuang and Bewitching are still trying to pass the stage. I can't bear to cultivate, so I'll just stay outside. I'll be able to know the results as soon as possible. As for wasting a few days, that's nothing. All right. Xiren rubbed Shangguan Yingying's hair dotingly. In fact, his mentality was exactly the same as Shangguan Yingying's. Bewitching continued to move forward. One corpse after another formed a path under his feet. A path of blood. This was truly a path of blood. Bewitching sighed in his heart. No wonder the cultivators in the demon training tower fought so cruelly. This was the characteristic of the demon training abyss. Becoming a murderous demon, killing anyone who stood in his way. If Buddha stood in his way, he would kill Buddha. This was truly a terrifying and domineering state. If one's willpower was not strong enough, they would probably be tortured to insanity by such days. In the process of killing, Bewitching found that his cultivation was growing at an astonishing speed. His combat strength was also increasing rapidly. If this continues, I'm sure my cultivation will have improved by the time I'm done with this trial. However, as time passed, whether it was Bailey Hongzhuang or Bewitching, there was a feeling of loneliness in their hearts. Everyone was his enemy, and the only one he could trust was himself. If they wanted to live, they had to kill all their opponents. As a result, the feeling of loneliness continued to spread in his heart. Bailey Hongzhuang did not know how many days she had spent in this endless slaughter. Day after day had made her feel numb. She did not know how many days had passed since she had participated in the trial. She remembered that Mo Yunjue had only participated in the trial for a short period of time. She never thought that she would need such a long time to complete the trial. In front of her, she was only 100 meters away from completing the trial. Thinking of this, a bright light shone in her eyes. After fighting for so long, she was finally going to complete the trial. Chapter 3792. Ding. After Bailey Hongzhuang had killed the last cultivator, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a deep sigh. The colored glass sword pierced the ground, emitting a sharp sound. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang also sat on the ground, her body paralyzed. Looking at the bloody scene in the distance, her mood was complicated. It was lonely at the top, perhaps this was how it felt. The long period of killing and loneliness made her feel an indescribable sadness and desolation. It was clearly just a test, but it inexplicably made her feel an indescribable sadness. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was sighing, she suddenly realized that the scene in front of her had changed. A green figure appeared in her line of sight. Looking at this figure, Bailey Hongzhuang felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. As she gradually approached, she recognized the owner of the figure. Han Xiling. Bailey Hongzhuang cried out in astonishment. Staring blankly at the figure in front of her, she could only wonder if she had seen wrongly. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the green figure quickly turned around, revealing a face that Bailey Hongzhuang could not be more familiar with. Bailey Hongzhuang, long time no see. Han Xiling's lips curled into a cold smile. Did you think that I was already dead? Are you not dead? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes narrowed. She clearly believed that Han Xiling was already dead. Although she did not manage to find Han Xiling's body, she firmly believed that under such circumstances, Han Xiling could not possibly still be alive. However, this figure in front of her, could it really be because her uncle Han Xiling was not dead? Han Xiling laughed coldly. I won't die so easily. Then why haven't you shown up for so long? I was severely injured by you. Fortunately, I survived. I've been recuperating for the past few years. Now that I've finally recovered, my cultivation base has also improved greatly. Han Xiling glanced coldly at Bailey Hongzhuang. I know you're married to Bewitching, but so what? In the end, he will still be mine. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. Even if you're still alive, it means nothing to us. No. Han Xiling's eyes were filled with contempt. Didn't you kill me because you were afraid that I would marry Bewitching? You clearly know that the entire Tiangang sect is in favor of my marriage with Bewitching. If you didn't appear, Bewitching and I would have already gotten married. I don't know how your relationship was in the past, and I don't care. However, everything is a foregone conclusion now. If you don't want to die, you'd better leave on your own. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was slightly cold. She had always hated Han Xiling. This woman was vicious. From the moment they met, this woman had been causing trouble for her everywhere. She even tried to secretly kill her. If she had not been careful, she would have died in Han Xiling's hands. However, Han Xiling's reappearance still caused a ripple in her heart. This woman's reappearance was not a good thing after all. I'll leave. Han Xiling chuckled. Why should I leave? You're the one who came between Bewitching and me. The person who should leave should be you. Chapter 3793. So what? Han Xiling's lips curled into a sneer. Actually, I've always had a place in Bewitching's heart, it's just that you didn't know about it. You have to know that when Bewitching was being oppressed by the sect, it was me who had been silently helping him. He will always remember me. You tried to kill me, do you think Bewitching doesn't care at all? Han Xiling's words hit Bailey Hongzhuang's heart hard. This was what she was most worried about after killing Han Xiling. She believed that Bewitching didn't like Han Xiling, but no matter what, Han Xiling had done Bewitching a favor. It was precisely because of this that Bewitching would tolerate her a lot, but in the end, Han Xiling still died in her hands. Although Bewitching said that this matter wasn't her fault, she believed that Bewitching must have cared about this matter. No matter how hateful Han Xiling was, she was still Bewitching's sister. Aren't you still alive now? Bailey Hongzhuang said coldly. Hearing this, Han Xiling chuckled. Yes, I'm not dead, so I'm going to snatch Bewitching from your hands. Impossible, stop dreaming. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Han Xiling indifferently. She believed in Bewitching's feelings for her. Han Xiling didn't succeed in the first place, and now it was even more impossible. Bailey Hongzhuang, I think you don't seem to understand men. For men, what they can't get is the best. Once they get it, the feeling is completely different. Back then, didn't Bewitching take a fancy to you because he was with me all the time? Now that our situation has been reversed, it's time to rewrite the result. Hearing Han Shiling's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression didn't change. Don't talk nonsense, everything is not as you think. She and Di Beichen had been together for so long, and Beichen's sincerity towards her could be seen by the sun and moon. She had never doubted this point. You're really that confident? Of course. Since that's the case, why don't we make a bet? Han Shiling looked at Bailey Hongzhuang coldly, his eyes were filled with confidence. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes narrowed. How do you want to bet? It's very simple, you'll hide in my house. I'll talk to Beichen's. If he doesn't have me, then I'll leave and never disturb you two's life. On the contrary, if he does have a place for me, then you're not allowed to appear in front of Beichen in the future. This bet is completely meaningless. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was filled with disdain. You'll definitely lose this round. Bailey Hongzhuang, it's too early for you to say that. If you're overconfident, the result will be very embarrassing for you. How about it? Do you dare to make a bet with me? If you don't have the guts, then you might as well just leave. Han Shiling's face was filled with provocation, as if he had a card up his sleeve and was certain that Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't dare to agree. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately said coldly, "Since you insist, I'll make a bet with you. However, if you lose, you'll have to disappear completely in the future." No problem. Han Shiling nodded without hesitation. Beichen will be very happy to see me. You'll definitely lose. You're thinking too much, Bailey Hongzhuang said coldly. Chapter 3794. Hearing the familiar footsteps, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately realized that this person was Di Beichen. The next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly hid in the room. As soon as she hid, Di Beichen opened the door. However, when Di Beichen saw Han Shiling in the room, his face could not help but be filled with a deep astonishment. "Shiling, you're still alive? Didn't you die in the assessment?" Han Shiling stared at Di Beichen affectionately, her eyes full of longing. She did not answer Di Beichen's words, and she hugged Di Beichen. "Beichen, I thought I would never see you again in my life. Fortunately, I survived, so I have the opportunity to come back and see you." Han Shiling's eyes were misty. "It's great to see you again, I miss you so much." Bailey Hongzhuang behind the screen could not help but frown after seeing this scene. Han Shiling was too active, and this scene of hugging was really a bit of an eyesore in her eyes. Di Beichen slowly stepped back, making Han Shiling leave his arms, and then he said, "I thought you had fallen, I didn't expect you to still be alive." After seeing Di Beichen's move, Bailey Hongzhuang showed a satisfied look. Han Shiling looked at Di Beichen with tears in her eyes. "Aren't you happy to see that I'm still alive?" Di Beichen shook his head. "I'm relieved to know that you're still alive." "Beichen, Bailey Hongzhuang was too ruthless. She wanted to take my life as soon as she made a move, and she also colluded with Xia Jiqing to kill me. If it weren't for my good fortune, it would be impossible for me to appear in front of you now. Shiling, if you didn't force her step by step, Hongzhuang wouldn't do this." Di Beichen sighed, and there was a bit of helplessness in his expression. However, Han Shiling took Di Beichen's hand and said, "It's not like this at all. Beichen, it's Bailey Hongzhuang who spread rumors in front of you. She thought I was dead, so she began to talk nonsense. She planned to take my life because she cared about the relationship between you and me, so she wanted to kill me forever. No matter what, I'm your sister, don't you think she's too much?" Hearing this, Di Beichen didn't speak. He just looked at Han Shiling with complicated eyes, but he didn't speak. Seeing this, Han Shiling was obviously not reconciled. She immediately shook Di Beichen's arm. "Beichen, do you not believe me? I'm telling the truth. I went through a lot of hardships to come back. Do you think that I'm lying?" Han Shiling couldn't help but sob. "I know, you think I'm unreasonable, but I really didn't lie about this." Looking at Han Shiling like this, Di Beichen couldn't help but say, "Shiling, I don't believe you." "So, you believe what I said?" Han Shiling's eyes flashed with a strong emotion. Di Beichen nodded. After Bailey Hongzhuang saw Di Beichen's performance behind the screen, her heart couldn't help but sink. She didn't expect that Di Beichen would believe what Han Shiling said. Bewitching had always said that he believed in her the most and never doubted her, but now he said such words to Han Shilling. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.